So the 2023 Pokemon World Championships just passed a couple weeks ago. I should know, I was there. Or in Japan at least, not actually at the venue though, because it was a lottery system for the tickets, and I don't think the Pokemon Company knows that I even exist. Oh well. But once again, this year's Worlds wasn't without its fair share of spicy drama. Shortly into the tournament, this tweet arose, or X, or post, or whatever terminology they're using now, from VGC player Brady Smith, who informed his audience that he'd been disqualified from the tournament for using a legally generated Pokemon after going up 2-0. Now, this post alone raises many good questions, such as, why did it take until the third round of the tournament before they started doing hack checks? Why weren't these checks done more frequently at the regional and national events prior to Worlds? It seems kinda cruel to let things slide until they've literally flown across the world to play on the game's biggest stage. But beyond all of that, this post reignited a debate as old as competitive Pokemon itself. Is competitive Pokemon too inaccessible? Usually this debate comes down to two clear camps. One camp that believes that in order to get the best possible Pokemon, you have to sink an ungodly amount of time into the game that just isn't feasible for most working adults or even busier students. Or the other side, which simply says, hey, the rules clearly state that you can't hack Pokemon into the game, you should be forced to play by the same parameters as everybody else. Both sides raise valid points, but why don't we dive more into each side's respective arguments? We'll start with the anti-hacking side. While their argument is pretty straightforward, rules are rules and you should play by them, what else supports their viewpoint? Well, for starters, Game Freak has been making competitive Pokemon more and more accessible every generation. If you compare the breeding and training process from Scarlet and Violet to Diamond and Pearl, the difference is night and day. Heck, in Gen 9 you could completely skip the breeding process entirely. It's very possible to just catch a Pokemon, max out its EVs using vitamins, change its nature with a mint, get it to level 50, and hypertrain its IVs. I mean, egg moves aren't even egg moves anymore. You can just slap a mirror herb on any Pokemon during a picnic and learn them immediately. You really wouldn't need to breed unless you're specifically looking for a Pokemon with 0 IVs, ironically, usually in the speed stat for Trick Room teams. You can realistically raise a competitive team Pokemon this generation with only a couple of days of hard work, maybe even a few hours if you have all the resources like money and bottle caps. So, I suppose the argument boils down to, yes, there is a time commitment to raising a team of competitive Pokemon, but it's a far smaller time commitment than it used to be. And if you're going to be playing in the World Championships, you logically should err on the side of caution. However, on the opposing side, I'm sure many would say that there shouldn't be a barrier that high before you even start learning how to play the game. It's like if you asked every NFL player to sew their own jersey by hand before they actually picked up a football and started playing. Yes, raising Pokemon is an important part of the game, but in the setting of a competitive context, taking the time to do it doesn't actually make you any better at the game. Most of the time, you'd be far better served saving that time by simply jumping straight to playing on the ladder. Figuring out what aspects of your team work and which ones don't. That's where the real competitive Pokemon journey starts, in the lab, not in the daycare. There's also legacy Pokemon to consider, or Pokemon that aren't from Scarlet and Violet but are legal to use in the current format. Many heavy hitters in this year's World Championships were Pokemon like Urshifu or Landorus who had to be obtained in games like Sword and Shield or Legends Arceus. So, not only is there a longer time barrier to get these Pokemon, in some cases you literally have to complete the 15 to 20 hour main story before you can even begin the process of soft resetting for optimal legendaries, but there's also a money barrier. A lot of these competitors are probably stretched incredibly thin financially just to get themselves to Japan, even if they won their way in. When you start adding not just one, but multiple $60 games, plus a DLC expansion pass for Sword and Shield into the mix, so you can have your optimized Urshifu for the team, well, it might just not be feasible for a lot of people. Look, I know a lot of us here, including myself, are legacy Pokemon fans who buy their $60 games once a year and probably never think twice about it. But for newer fans, or people who are just now getting into the competitive landscape, you're asking them to drop several $100s just to have access to all the legalized Pokemon. Should the expectation be that you need to own 3 or more different Pokemon games just to be on an equal playing field? Because that does feel a little messed up in my opinion. So what's the solution here? In a way, it feels like everything has been streamlined as much as possible. At least without completely overhauling the way a Pokemon is trained, like in Let's Go or Legends Arceus. EVs, IVs, and everything in between have more or less been simplified as much as they can, as we went over in the beginning of this video. I saw some people have the opinion that once you beat the game, it should have a simulation mode where you can generate a Pokemon for online usage only. A virtual type of league, something along the lines of a battle factory or a battle agency, but with more in-depth customization of your Pokemon. While I think this is a decent solution, if I had to guess, Game Freak would probably see this as a direct conflict to the main draw of Pokemon, which is battling alongside the creatures that you raised yourself. I mean, obviously that's not the main draw for everybody, but for them at least, it's always been the cornerstone of the franchise. Which is why I think a better solution might just be a total separation of core series Pokemon games and competitive Pokemon. No, I'm not suggesting this should hold worlds on Pokemon Showdown, but that would be cool, not gonna lie. Rather, I think it might be time for another dedicated Pokemon battle simulation game. In my retrospective video I made on Pokemon Battle Revolution a couple of years ago, I remember saying that we'll probably never get a game like this again because there's no need for a battle simulator anymore. Mostly because 3D graphics aren't a big draw, and games like this had little to offer outside of that. I'd like to amend this statement, however. I think in the post-National Dex era we're in, there should just be one giant simulation game where all the Pokemon are available. And the only thing that game is used for is creating teams and battling people online. If anything, this doesn't even have to be a physical game. It could just be another subscription service software like Pokemon Home. This also addresses the issue I discussed earlier about how nearly half the Pokemon that were legalized in the rule set for Worlds aren't even obtainable in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet without transferring from Gen 8. The connections between games are no longer nearly as seamless as they used to be. Some Pokemon can get into the game without being in the dex itself. Some attacks just spontaneously get removed. Some moves like Scald still exist, but get taken out of movesets seemingly at random. So to avoid all this headache about legalized Pokemon and transfer-only Pokemon and everything in between, just have one game per console generation that will serve as that console's dedicated platform for competitive Pokemon gaming. No breeding or training required. It could literally just be Showdown, but with better graphics, and you have to pay like $15 a year. Which honestly, I think is a trade-off that most people would accept if it meant they never had to breed or grind EVs ever again. And they could just patch this game with all the models and moves every time a new generation comes out. Or update the rule sets whenever they wanted. They could also do balance patches on the fly, instead of having to wait 3 whole years for Mega Kangaskhan to get a parental bond nerf. They could even get crazy and rotate various gimmicks like Mega Evolutions or Terrestrialization in and out of the meta. But I think my main point is, there's already a huge disconnect between competitive Pokemon and the process you go through to train for it, and just regular, main story, casual Pokemon. So I honestly don't think that separating those two things would be all that bad at this stage in the game. Especially with the current deck scenario where Pokemon are constantly getting Thanos snapped in and out of existence in the core series. Anyway, the solution was a bit of a tangent there, so to loop back to the original question at hand, yes, I do think competitive Pokemon is still a bit too inaccessible for most people. The number of eggs you hatch or times you soft reset for a legendary with the optimal IVs is not a measure of skill. It's just a measure of how little else you have to do in your life, and it's massively inconvenient for a lot of us who do have things to do. Or maybe just don't have the money to go buy Pokemon Sword to get an Urshifu for an advantage in this one rule set. But for now, I do think if you're playing competitive Pokemon, especially the official VGC format, I would 100% make sure your Pokemon are legit before your chances at a championship are whisked away by a random hack check. Was it unfair? Technically, no. Rules are rules, and if you violate them, you are subject to punishment. But that doesn't mean there isn't an issue at hand with how inaccessible competitive Pokemon can be. If these hack checks weren't a common thing before Worlds, then I have a tough time faulting anyone who wouldn't want to save some valuable hours by skipping the breeding and training process. Also, make people aware of hack checks before they fly all the way to Japan to compete, just as a common courtesy, I would say, that's all. But hey, that's my take on the recent situation. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. But don't forget to leave a like in this video and subscribe for more videos just like this one. I'll see you guys next time.